Hey, hey.
Howdy.
Can everyone hear me clearly? My God. Can you hear me clear? Do I sound good?
Yeah, you do.
Okay. So thank you to all the people who emailed in to the show, making audio suggestions. Appreciate them. They weren't helpful, but we did find a way to help. So yeah, but anyway, appreciate the spirit and the compassion, and hopefully this will persist. We will have clear audio from me going forward.
Mm-hmm.
That was boring. So let's talk about, like, what do you want to talk about?
I just want to mention our viewership. It seems a little light tonight. And I was just listening to Jimmy Dore on Tucker, and he was saying that he was like reaching out to these tech companies asking why his viewership is going down recently. And they said, oh, well, it's the election season, so your viewership is going down. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm a political analyst. Shouldn't during election season my viewership be going up because it's like selling toys during Christmas season? And I think there's some suppression happening with big tech against your smaller independent outlets when it comes down to the wire. I think we saw this also with Trump on Joe Rogan. I'm not sure if that was YouTube themselves suppressing the content or if it was a mass flagging campaign or both. But if you search for the Joe Rogan interview with Donald Trump, you can't find it at all on YouTube. You find the New York Times talking about it, you find Daily Mail talking about it, but you don't find what you're actually looking for.
I didn't know. I knew about the suppression of Rogan, the Rogan Trump interview. Mm-hmm. I did not know about Jimmy Dore. I did not know his audience share was declining. I had heard some rumors, I guess, about suppression on YouTube for the election of people like us. And yeah, I mean, judging by the numbers we have so far right now, yeah, I think we are being suppressed. And of course we are. Let's all remember when Mark Zuckerberg and the heads of Google and Jack Dorsey, then Twitter, were hauled before Congress. Was it 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago? And told by an array of Congress people and senators that if they don't censor people like us, they will be censored by the government. This is exactly what happened with Hollywood in the 1930s with the Roosevelt administration. The Roosevelt administration came in 1934 and said to Hollywood, if you don't censor all of these very un-American themes in your movies, because Hollywood was very raunchy and nasty and very disrespectful of authority coming out of the Prohibition in the 30s, and FDR and his administration hated that. They said, if you don't censor yourselves, we're going to do it for you. And so Hollywood instituted the Motion Picture Production Code, which governed all Hollywood movies for the next 30 years, and reshaped American popular culture. And that's what happened with the social media companies during that time. I forget the exact year, but it was around, what was that, 6-7 years ago?
Oh, okay. Yeah. That particular one, it was after Trump got elected, right?
Was it? I think it was before. It was around then. I mean, that's when everything sort of turned. It was, that was part of it. Yeah, it was Trump getting elected, and then I think social media, right. Yeah. They got hauled before Congress. They were all forced to sit there and during a hearing and take questions from, I think it was the Senate even. Was it the Senate? I think it was.
Yeah. Ted Cruz got it.
Right. And that was the absolute message, clear message, was because they hadn't really been doing much censorship before then. Now, I had reported, and I was one of the very first people to this day. It's sort of amazing that I'm one of the very first people who's ever like said this publicly in the media. But Facebook had at that time, even then, an ongoing alliance partnership with the Atlantic Council, which is simply the think tank of NATO. I mean, it's not, there's no bones about that. I mean, it's funded in part by the US government, and its job is to basically put out the messaging for NATO, which is meaning for the American empire. And Facebook had a formal partnership with the Atlantic Council. So yeah, I mean, this is just, and ever since then, as we know, ever since they were hauled before the Senate and told that if they didn't censor themselves, they would be censored by the government. We have seen what? We have seen wave after wave after wave of censorship, repression, suppression of all sorts of news stories. Hunter Biden laptop being only the most famous example, but all sorts of reporting of news about the Ukraine war and now about Gaza gets suppressed. Pro-Trump or potentially pro-Trump messaging gets suppressed, like the Rogan interview with Trump. YouTube, I mean, Rogan had to put out a thing on Twitter to help people find it on YouTube because YouTube has buried it in the algorithm. It won't show up in anybody's feed now. And, you know, it goes on and on. We know the whole Twitter files thing, Matt Taibbi exposed. We know that ever since then, ever since the federal government told them this publicly, it was almost like a Stalinist show trial, right? If you don't atone for your sins, we will punish you. The heavy end of the state will be on your necks. And Mark Zuckerberg, as wealthy and powerful as he is, he doesn't have any tanks or prisons or cops. So he had to say yes to the government. And that's what he's done ever since. And all of them, Twitter, even under Musk, of course, Musk is taking orders from the state. We know this. But that's what we're seeing to this day. And so here's the latest wave. You and I got suppressed multiple times during COVID and then early Ukraine war for saying stuff about Ukraine. And now it's back. You know, we were they were pretty cool to us for about a year there. But now it's election season. Stakes are too high. They can't let people like us talk too freely. And it's just the ultimate expression or example of corporatism. But in this case, it's sort of authoritarian corporatism, meaning that it's really just fascism. I mean, not to say that America is a fascist country, but it is very much to say that elements of American governance at the federal level in particular are absolutely fascist in this sense. They're corporatist arrangements between the federal government and major corporations to co-manage and regulate our society. And in this case, it is about regulating speech and managing speech together. That is the essence, the definition really of fascism. If you look at any serious scholar of fascism, that is central in their definition of it. You look at the Italian fascists in the 20s and 30s. You look at, of course, the Nazis in the 30s and 40s. You look at any government that's been deemed, Franco's government, deemed fascist by serious scholars, you will see that right at the core of it. Collaboration between government and business and a suppression of speech. There you have it. So it's not hyperbole to say this, to call it fascist. It's just technically, objectively what it is, definitionally what it is. And, you know, right here, you know, the fact that we have about, 1/4 of the audience we usually have at this time, you know, it's not the greatest crime against human beings ever committed, but it's a crime, and it's a crime against free speech in the United States of America, which, you know, we've been told is the champion of free speech. So there you are. Welcome to the world.
Yep. On this note, I think it's important to look at how the tides are changing a little bit. The Washington Post, USA Today, LA Times, Tampa Bay Times, Sun Sentinel, Minnesota Star Tribune, Omaha World Herald, all endorsed Joe Biden, are not endorsing Kamala Harris. Most notably of that is Washington Post.
Wow.
Which is owned by Jeff Bezos. And Jeff Bezos also announced that he wants to get some conservative writers over at the Washington Post. He's looking to hire conservative writers at the Washington Post. I'm not sure if this is a fallout from his divorce with Mackenzie Bezos, who has been championing liberal causes. But I think it's part of this larger trend of tech CEOs warming up to the Trump administration. CNN published this article that big tech CEOs are calling up Trump, trying to be friendly with them. So in the last week, Tim Cook of Apple, Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google. I can't pronounce Indian names. Sorry,
just the racism just won't stop.
Yeah,
you can't control yourself, can you? And,
yeah.
you also say Kamala, don't you?
I do, because of the Ugandan giant, the great Kamala, who was also Harris.
You say Ugandan?
Yeah.
Now what are you saying about her? Wow. I mean, you just can't stop yourself, can you?
The only Kamala Harris I recognize is Harris, the great Kamala, the Ugandan giant of WWE fame. Yeah.
I didn't know who that was. Yeah. I'm sorry. It's the one sport I'm not aware of. I don't follow.
A very large black man who wrestled with leopard tights and a bone in his nose and carried a
straight up bone in the nose?
Yeah.
They went all the way. Awesome. Okay.
And yeah, current Amazon CEO Andy Jassy also reached out and contacted him, as well as Mike Zuckerberg calling him up after the assassination attempt. So it seems like all these tech CEOs are warming up to the Trump administration, knowing that they'll have to do business with him should he be in charge. And maybe these people have access to all the data and know how people are actually going to vote. And so they know that they have to get friendly if they're going to survive.
My former father-in-law owned a Walgreens drugstore in Savannah, Georgia in 1961, which had a lunch counter. Early 60s. So it was segregated. It had, by law, it was segregated. And my father-in-law, did I say stepfather? Father-in-law is the most apolitical, basically, person ever, just doesn't care, but all about business. All about business. So the NAACP came to his store and had a meeting with him and told him, listen, we're going to boycott and picket and raise all kinds of ruckus for your business if you don't integrate your lunch counter. And so my former father-in-law took about 5 seconds to decide whether to desegregate his lunch counter, and he did. Yeah, business people, and this is their great virtue in my view, is that they are amoral. They have to be amoral. So this is what you're seeing here. You're seeing tech giants. Again, we think of them as these galactic monsters who control the universe, right? Elon Musk, my God, he almost literally is trying to control at least part of the universe. Mark Zuckerberg, these people have more money than God has. And with that has come a whole lot of power. But you see how powerful the state is when those people, these people who have $100 billion at their disposal and control corporations that employ thousands and thousands of people that oversee all political speech in the world, by the way, all significant political speech goes through their platforms. All of it. I mean, it's phenomenal how much power they have. They are nothing before the power of the United States government, the state of the United States. They immediately take a knee and kowtow and beg for forgiveness and pledge to do whatever they can to rectify their sins. And that's what they're doing. They see where the wind is blowing, and they don't want a United States federal government against them. That's a bad thing. We all know that when the feds go after people, they almost always get them because they have immense resources, and they can devote infinite resources basically in prosecutions. And here's if I were Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk or whoever, yeah, I'd be trying to figure out who the next government's going to be and filleting them. And that's what they're doing. So
I've got a clip here that might make you say something nice about Elon Musk. That sort of
not happening.
What you said.
Not happening.
Okay. Test run here. Victoria Nuland on Rachel Maddow.
Third election in a row in which Russia has tried to interfere to try to get Trump into the White House. How do you assess the magnitude and the type of interference they're attempting this year compared to what they've done in his previous 2 elections?
Well, as you said earlier, Rachel, he's at it again. This time he's not even trying to hide his hand, and he has far more sophisticated tools. You know, his AI is better, so he can make these fake videos. He has done things like spend $10 million trying to buy American influencers and get them parroting his lines and not even know it's happening. But he's also got a brand new, very, very powerful tool, which is Elon Musk and X. You know, in 2020, the social media companies worked hard with the U.S. government to try to do content moderation, to try to catch this stuff as it was happening. But this time we have Elon Musk talking directly to the Kremlin and ensuring that every time the Russians put out something like this, it gets 5 million views on X before anybody can catch it. So it's quite dangerous. Although I do think the American electorate has gotten more sophisticated and more savvy about this stuff.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, but wait a second. Okay, so first of all, Elon Musk. Let's establish who this man is first. Okay. Yesterday, I saw a Cybertruck in camo. Have you seen that? Have you seen the camo Cybertrucks?
I have not.
Camo.
I've seen
Cybertruck.
I've seen Kid Rock's Robert E. Lee Cybertruck.
Oh,
but,
nice.
Yeah.
Camos. So I told my girlfriend this to prepare for this. I could be in jail at any moment because a fist fight with a Cybertruck owner is just imminent with me. Like, it's just at any moment when I go outside, it can happen. Because when I see a Cybertruck, I stop and start yelling about neoliberalism, the conquest of the aesthetic world with this militaristic neoliberal. It looks like a dystopian prison wagon. Anyway, but the camo was sort of like the, it was just so on the nose. Thank you for that. Thank you for having a camo version of your dystopian sci-fi prison truck.
What if you added truck nuts to your camo Cybertruck? Would that?
You should.
Yeah.
Well, you should also like mount a 50 caliber cannon on top too. I mean, why not, dude? Not a cannon, sorry, howitzer. I've always wanted a 50 caliber howitzer with a mount, you know, that you can put on a Cybertruck. I mean, that's obviously what it was built for. As Elon Musk is becoming what position in the federal government will he hold under Trump? What's the cabinet position?
The idea, and I think you might like this, even though it's
I hate him too much.
I know. It's Department of Government Efficiency, so it has Elon Musk's horrible aesthetics. Doge is the acronym, which is a little joke of his. But the idea is he's going to come into the United States government just like he did with Twitter and fire a bunch of people and find all the ways that the government is spending too much money and hopefully save like $2 trillion a year on the budget by firing a bunch of bureaucrats who do nothing.
Do you know how efficient I would be if I received hundreds of millions of dollars from the government to do my business? You know, by the way, they have a monopoly, so it's not like I had to go like, you know, get competing bids. It's, the government. Oh, they want rockets? Oh, okay.
But yeah, Twitter, for example, he fired 75% of Twitter's employees.
Well, great for him. I mean, I don't care. And then what did he do with Twitter? You know, he made it into what? Like another totalitarian hellscape in which it's controlled entirely by him instead of a committee of progressive woke freaks. It's controlled by Elon and what he thinks is not cool today to be said. Nah, I mean, people have been censored daily by that fuck, and based on his own predilections, which change day to day. By the way, I just saw today that in 2023, as far as I remember, that's last year. I think it was mid-year. I think it was in June or July. Elon Musk tweeted out this thing about Iran being surrounded by U.S. military bases and therefore making fun of all this talk about going to war with Iran, saying how dare Iran put its country right near all these U.S. military bases. A fantastic anti-imperialist, anti-war statement just a year and some ago, Elon Musk said, and now all of a sudden he's just living with Benjamin Netanyahu and can't wait to go to war with everybody in the Middle East who opposes Israel. I don't know what that man is about except autism and whatever is in front of his little binary mind at the moment. Mm-hmm. And I just think he's very, very scary because he's been given so much money and power, not through his brilliance in navigating the free markets, but his brilliance in making stuff that the U.S. government wants. So and a camo. I mean, the thing is, this camo on the Cybertruck was the perfect. It really finally, it fulfilled. It says to everybody what this is about, what he's about. It's a militaristic neoliberalism.
You don't see, again, I don't think the Trump side gets their message out pretty much at all without having a mode of communication that is as direct and widely used as X is now. I don't think you get the multiple surges and the information out at all, period. And it looks like he's in the crosshairs of Victoria Nuland and a potential Harris administration to be brought to charges for misinformation and disinformation. And we might have legit government censorship on a larger scale, completely sanctioned by the government if Harris wins.
Yeah. So this is, again, this is where U.S. domestic politics, I guess, unfortunately, always are about geopolitics. And so this is obviously about Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
And I don't understand it. I don't understand quite why the neocons are still at war with Trump at such a fevered pitch, because he's giving them much of what they want, in particular on the Middle East. Mm-hmm. They are in line with Trump on the Middle East, not just full-throated support for Israel, but war with Iran, the Abraham Accords, deals with the Saudis to cut out the Palestinians and just establish a new Middle East controlled entirely by the U.S. and its proxies in these kingdoms. I don't know why they still need Trump's head. I understood it back in 2015 and 2016 when we didn't know, and all he was saying was stuff about NATO not being necessary. I understood why, and talking about how Iraq was a disastrous war. Then I understood why the neocons wanted his head. I don't get it now, except that he's not quite as committed, at least rhetorically, to the project of a new American century as they are. Maybe. And that's true. He's not as rhetorically committed. And in fact, he's often expressed skepticism about the new American century spelled out by the neocons famously before the Iraq War, in which the United States would have military bases, not just in 500 or 700 places as they do now, but in every place all over the world. They called them constabularies. The Project for a New American Century called them. They wanted more military bases. They wanted U.S. military bases basically in every country, every region, every area of any importance in the world. They wanted a full Pax Americana, a true global American empire. And Trump was clearly not interested in that, and in fact, quite skeptical of it and really oppositional toward it in a lot of ways during the campaign in 2016. But ever since then, as we know, what has he done? As president, he hired a bunch of neocons. John Bolton, H.R. McMaster, I just heard him today talking about Israel. He's just a completely unreconstructed neocon. And then he, of course, did all this stuff with the Abraham Accords, which was almost deliberately, in very large part, it was a deliberate attempt to back burner the Palestinian issue or ignore the Palestinian issue. And give power to the kingdoms in the UAE and Saudi. And then Ukraine. So what exactly did Trump do that was so terrible from the neocons' perspective in Ukraine. He was the first president to send weapons to Ukraine to use against the Russians. Now I will say this though. Trump just said another thing about Israel and Gaza that I've been suspecting for a long time.
Are you talking about the Times of Israel piece you sent?
Yeah. Yeah. He, many sources say, but this is according to the Times of Israel, which is I think it's basically a Likudnik Israeli paper. So it's not like they're going to, that Trump has told Netanyahu clearly in no uncertain terms that there it is, that you need to end this war by January 20th. Soon. So it would be sort of Trump's October surprise, I guess. It would be the thing he can deliver. Say, look what I can do. And to the people as they're voting or after they voted for him. And he said similar things earlier. Like I think in April, he said something to Israelis officials about, you've got to end this war now.
His line has been, I'll solve those problems before I'm even in office if I get elected when it comes to Ukraine and Israel.
Yeah, I believe him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know. I mean, he has gained so much political capital in Israel over the last, 8 years, through Jared, through all the stuff he did. Netanyahu is his guy. Most Israeli society loves Trump. So he has a lot of power there. Whereas Biden and Harris weirdly are perceived among Israelis as kind of sellouts and betrayers, even though they're not. But Trump is really loved by the by the Israeli right, which is about 60% of the country, and its entire government. And so I think if anybody can actually force them to stop killing, it's him. And I think he will. I believe it. I think Trump is going to end the Gaza war.
It'd be really easy. Like Sinwar's dead. You could say this was a war against Hamas. Hamas is completely compromised. We won.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, just look at it. Look at the place. And then the Israelis are doing nothing but crowing about what they've done against Hezbollah. I mean, that's to them, the way they're talking about it's nothing but a victory. The wonderful, amazing pager attacks, they can't stop loving the pager attacks and bragging about the pager attacks. And I'm not talking about just Israelis, but again, the American supporters of them. I mean, it's just people in the media who I know talking about the pager attacks again and again and again as like the greatest example of how wonderful the Israeli military is. Talk about a mass terror attack. That's what the pager attacks were. But anyway, so I think Trump again, and JD Vance, and thank you for sending me that interview he did with Tim Dillon, which is really good, interesting. I recommend it highly. JD Vance, for most, not all, but most of that interview sounds a lot like an isolationist from the 1920s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Trump, in many, not all, but most, I would say, of his moments about foreign policy also sounds like an isolationist, or I should say at least both of those guys are the first and second candidates for the highest offices in this land from the major parties who express those opinions, who are skeptical about an American empire and are very clear about it and clear-eyed about it. They understand what the empire is and they don't like it. And they want to, I think, reel it back. At least I hope so. Mm-hmm. JD Vance is not interested in going into offensive wars, preemptive wars. He's not interested in elective wars. He's not interested in occupations, permanent occupations. He's not interested in regime change. He said very clearly, and this was the best moment in that Tim Dillon interview, that we don't want war with Iran, even though Israel does. Our interest as the United States in this case is different than the interest of Israel. We want war with Iran. We don't want war with Iran. They do.
Yeah.
Now, that's just not the kind of thinking or feeling that we've ever had from candidates for president or vice president ever. And it's, since everyone knows those are my main issues. I mean, as they should be for everyone interested in politics, by the way.
Mhm.
God, I mean, this is one of those moments where I'm thinking, damn, should I actually vote for Trump? First time I would have voted for president since 1984. I mean, that's as good as it's ever gotten in an American presidential race. Just expressions of skepticism about the American imperial project. You just have never had that, ever. Everybody else who's run for president and vice president from the major parties has been fully part of the religion until these guys. So if you're going to vote, and if you vote for Trump and Vance, and if you do it on the grounds of at least curbing American war making, I'm okay with that. I think, yeah,
they're doubling down on it too in the last week. I've got that JD Vance clip. I'll play it real quick.
Right. So obviously, Israel has the right to defend itself, but America's interest is sometimes going to be distinct. Like sometimes we're going to have overlapping interests, and sometimes we're going to have distinct interests. And our interest, I think, very much is in not going to war with Iran. Right. It would be huge distraction of resources. It would be massively expensive to our country.
Incredible. I mean, again, that's not what I would say. I'd be far more radical, but there's nothing like, but that's a radical statement for a major party candidate for vice president. Radical statement.
Yeah. Just to wrap up real quick on the Victoria Nuland thing, her husband, Robert Kagan, resigned from the Washington Post as a senior editor over Bezos insisting that they not endorse Harris. So, yeah.
My favorite historian.
Yeah.
Robert Kagan, the neoconservative. He's their analysis is often correct. It's the politics that's wrong.
Yeah.
But the analysis is that the United States has always been a global imperialist nation. And that's completely correct. And no one else will acknowledge that. And for them, that justifies things like the Iraq War and supporting Israel and all the rest of it. And for me, it's a reason to not do those things. But so again, the analysis and the politics, two different things, everybody. Like I can completely agree with the analysis of the neocons, which I often do. By the way, I completely agree with the analysis of the Likud party and Netanyahu about the Palestinians. They do not want a two-state solution. They will not, the majority clearly will not ever accept a Jewish ethno-state. Correct. The politics that flow from the analysis, that's where we differ. For me, if the Palestinians clearly will never accept a Jewish ethno-state, then we should probably give up on the project of a Jewish ethno-state in Palestine. If the analysis is correct that American political leaders, presidents, senators, always, from the founding fathers to the present, have been fully committed to establishing and maintaining a global American empire, then we should think about rolling that back, not extending it. That's my politics flowing from that analysis. The neocon politics, is, of course, is to extend this thing that has gotten us nothing but war, bloodshed, and vast expense of treasure over 200 plus years. I would like to stop it. They want to continue it based on their analysis. Okay, if the Palestinians will fight for eternity, then why do you want to continue this thing? Anyway, so Kagan is Victoria Nuland's husband. And she, yeah, so right. So
yeah. I mean, they're honest. They really are. Like, yeah.
No, I love them for that.
Yeah.
No, yes. And I spent a lot of time, and everyone should, if you're concerned about the Palestine issue, I almost every day I watch like Dan Senor's Call Me Back podcast. Everyone should. He has on. So Dan Senor was a Bush administration official who, He was the public relations director for the occupation in Iraq in 2003. Like, he was the guy who was selling the Iraq war from Iraq to the world. So he's as deeply neoconservative as anybody can be. And he's had this, and he's Jewish, and he's super ultra Zionist, and not surprisingly, and he has this podcast that's become the thing to listen to for Zionists and pro-Israel people over the last year. And so he has on nothing but like the cream of the cream of the pro-Israel Zionist and Israeli government journalists and government officials and whoever. And so this is, if you really want to get into how the Zionists and the Israeli government are thinking, that's the podcast. And yeah, they're very open. It's lovely. I mean, it's right there on YouTube, and they're just talking about exactly how they think about everything. And they want to go to war with Iran, and they would love to have a direct war with Iran, and they would love for the United States to go directly into war with Iran, and they would love for, there to be a massive conflagration all throughout the Middle East, in which the United States is bombing all of Iran's proxies and Yemen, and we have Marines and the 101st Infantry and the 82nd Infantry on the ground, and we full-scale war all throughout the Middle East, from Gaza to Lebanon, American boots on the ground, and massive bombing campaigns in Syria and Iraq and Iran and Yemen, and this is what they want. And they say this all the time on YouTube. Go listen to their podcasts, everybody. Yeah.
To balance out this program, I want to play what Kamala Harris was saying about foreign policy on her side. We didn't get a chance to play this last week, but this was her in Michigan, winning over the Muslim vote in Michigan by campaigning with Liz Cheney.
Bringing the allies together is because they are fully aware of and remember, to the Congresswoman's point, World War II. Remember, this concept of isolation, we were once there as a nation, and then Pearl Harbor happened. Let's remember recent history. Europe remembers it well. When we got attacked, Pearl Harbor, we jumped in. And it is because America jumped in that we were ultimately able to win that war. And it should be a constant reminder to us, we have to remember history, that isolationism, which is exactly what Donald Trump is pushing, pull out of NATO, abandon our friends, isolationism is not insulation. It is not insulation. It will not insulate us from harm in terms of our national security. So I say that to emphasize a point that the Congresswoman made, and the other point I'd make is also check out where he's been on how he thinks about America's military and service members. One of the great, great American heroes, a prisoner of war, John McCain. Remember how
Wow.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
I love her. That's what you learn when you become a vice principal.
Mm-hmm.
You get a lot of historical lessons, and that's what she clearly gleaned from her years as a vice principal. Yeah, no, I mean, this is okay. I'll say it again. This is the Democratic Party always, and especially now. But this is just par for the course. People think the Democrats were an anti-war party for a few years there, after Vietnam, when I was growing up, in particular, 70s, 80s, and 90s. No, they never have been. They've always been committed, again, to the idea of a universal global American empire. And therefore, they have always had to fight militantly, murderously sometimes, whenever what they call isolationism rears its head. It's actually just non-interventionism. Americans have never been isolationists. Americans have always been interested in trade, global trade, in travel. No people have traveled more across the world than Americans, as tourists, as all sorts of things, for more than 100 years. And of course, massive amounts of trades with every corner of the globe. And we love food from everywhere. And we, of course, welcome in immigrants from all over the globe more than any other country, even though some of us want to limit that, but we're the most international people ever, really. There's no question about it. Go to an American city, it's hard to even say that it's American. It's really a global city. So that's a smear that's been used since the Spanish-American War. It was invented, isolationism was invented as a term then to smear opponents of that war. People who said we shouldn't actually send all our troops to the Philippines and Cuba. We shouldn't try to colonize those places. We shouldn't kill thousands of people to colonize those places. We shouldn't try to remake those countries into a little America in the Pacific and in the Caribbean. Those people who said those things, who said, let's not go to war in these places we've never heard of, they were called isolationists. And it was very effective. And in fact, you could say that the invention and diffusion of that term, isolationist, is the reason we have an American empire. Because in 1898 and 1899, when the U.S. is going to the Philippines and Cuba, and people are being called an isolationist who are opposed to this, like Mark Twain. Mark Twain was the leader of the Anti-Imperialist League at that time. He was the leading opponent of these crazy wars abroad. He was called this new thing. Oh, Mark Twain's an isolationist. The Anti-Imperialist League, they're isolationists. They want to just hunker down in this country and not engage with the world. Just the opposite is true. Of course, Mark Twain traveled the world and wrote about it. All of the anti-imperialists were actually cosmopolitan, tended to live in big cities and be very interested in the world. They just didn't want to intervene militarily in the world, and it didn't want to remake the rest of the world into America. But that smear against people like that, against people like me, has won the discursive battle for more than a century. And for that reason,
history, for sure.
Say again?
When talking about history, for sure, that's just accepted that this camp is called isolationist and it's wrong. And
they're wrong. And they were wrong. And if not for them, or if they had won, we would be speaking German. We'd be living under Nazi rule to this day. The Man in the High Castle, that series, if the isolationists had won, that's how we would be living, is what we all think. It's the biggest fraud in modern human history. It's the most damaging fraud in modern human history. And I'm here to set it straight. And I'm writing a book to do that too.
And that's the clip that convinced Dave Smith to vote for Trump this time around. He said that the Harris campaign is championing Liz Cheney, championing John McCain, and is explicitly promising to continue neocon dominance in foreign policy. The Trump campaign has explicitly kicked those people out of the Republican Party, and it's existentially important to make sure that the neocons don't get a victory and that they are completely expelled, because they are a tiny, tiny minority that nobody agrees with, that has done nothing but destroy nations.
Yep. Donald Trump has said, he said at the Libertarian Party convention that he will appoint one libertarian to his cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
He has obviously elevated Elon Musk, at least to shadow cabinet level. And Elon has had, sort of, I would say, nominally libertarian identifications. Peter Thiel, major funder, major supporter of the Trump campaign. And Thiel, I think, is also supplying some of the personnel in the Trump campaign.
Well, J.D. Vance and Vivek.
J.D. Vance, thank you. Right. Vance himself is a Thiel guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's had formal relationships with Thiel. And now, okay, so those of us with sort of libertarianish leanings would say that's positive, and it is. I suppose it's an improvement over other political appointees in the past, but these are libertarians of a particular kind. These are not what I would call real libertarians, pure libertarians. I don't know, not even close to pure, but these are libertarians like Peter Thiel. So Peter Thiel, what's he done? Right? Oh, he's a libertarian, but he also founded Palantir, whose main customer has been the Central Intelligence Agency. And multiple defense contracts with Palantir for Peter Thiel. Elon Musk, my God, his companies have been all up in the defense establishment in various ways, and the intelligence establishment in various ways. This whole, and we're now seeing this whole new brand of libertarian, and I'd say that Reason Magazine is kind of the soft version of this. That I never knew this until now, but now it's really clear. For whatever reason, they have an entire foot fully inside the national security state establishment. That's how they think. That's how they operate. Their assumptions are based around that.
I think there's a distinction between Reason and the Peter Thiels of the world. I think Peter Thiel and Elon Musk are just defense contractors straight up. Like, that's what they are. I think Reason Magazine is controlled opposition meant to sell libertarians on establishment ideas.
Yep.
I think, Thiel and Musk are people who are willing to work with the United States government for their contracts, but also, like, there isn't a single Trump supporter on Reason Magazine staff. And going all in on Trump is signaling a very different direction that they want things to go. And the libertarian argument for supporting that is there's going to be contractors no matter what. There's going to be people who have this power no matter what. Wouldn't you like that those people weren't people who hated you and that might have some sympathies with you?
Right. So, I mean, my point there about Trump and libertarians, his new relationship with libertarians that's exciting so many people, is that he's picked very particular libertarians who are not going to betray the fundamentals of the foreign policy establishment. Now, I just got through saying that he is challenging the foreign policy establishment, at least rhetorically, and I'd say mostly rhetorically. But he's not ever gone as far as I would like, and this is why I won't vote for him. I mean, I am encouraged, wouldn't say excited, but I'm encouraged by what I've heard from him and Vance about foreign policy. Again, skepticism about the whole thing is great, but I'm never going to vote for him as so long as he continues to talk in the way that he does about the necessity of supporting Israel, of being belligerent toward Iran, and especially toward China and the CCP and all that. So Trump has not quite challenged yet what needs to be challenged, which is the bigger idea, the biggest idea, the central idea, which is that we should rule the world. He thinks we should, just in a different way, maybe in a less heavy-handed way, maybe in a less direct way, but he certainly wants to. I think he wants all the bases all over the world, 500 to 700 military bases. I've not heard Trump say a word about that. It's ridiculous. Do we have that map, by the way, of Iran and all the military bases, the U.S. military bases that are next to Iran?
I've got that map.
This is actually fewer, and we should talk about this. There's actually fewer bases surrounding Iran than recently.
Is this what you're referring to?
Probably. Yeah. So there's Iran, upper right, big country, and these are all the current military bases of the United States that are in the Middle East. You know, and previously, I mean, as of like 5 years ago, there were also U.S. military bases to the north and to the east of Iran. Those have been shut down because of resistance. The resistance, okay? So we had military bases in Pakistan until Imran Khan came to power as the prime minister. And Imran Khan was the first Pakistani leader to be opposed to the U.S. empire in the Middle East. He wanted the U.S. to leave the Middle East. And this is why Imran Khan has been in prison for much of the last 2 years, because the CIA and the U.S. government has engineered a whole crackdown on Imran Khan, who was the prime minister, an extremely popular politician in Pakistan and the leader of the biggest political party in Pakistan. They are officially, and he has been consistently, anti-US. They want, meaning not they want to kill Americans, not meaning they want to go commit terrorist acts against Americans. They have no interest in that. Imran Khan was a world famous cricket player who played for Britain and all around the world. No, they want the United States military. See these bases? They would like those to be gone. What a radical conception. That's the resistance in the Middle East. It goes from Pakistan and Imran Khan's secular, very normal, moderate party, all the way down to the Houthis down there, all the way in the south, who are radical, fundamentalist, Islamist, Shia. Shia? Yes. Yes, that's why they're aligned with Iran. And all through the Middle East region. I mean, we don't have to mention Hamas and Hezbollah. There are in Syria, Iraq, there are organized armed factions that have for about 20 to 25 years been fighting in the field, in the desert, to drive the United States out, to get rid of all these bases, which again seems to me, I mean, just why is this not everybody's cause? Why does the United States need to have bases all the way across the world here? And in this number, I mean, look at these are air bases. You know what an air base is? That's like what, 20, a dozen air bases just there in the Middle East. So Pakistan got rid of its military U.S. military bases in 2017 because of the rising anti-American sentiment, the rise of the resistance in Pakistan. Afghanistan, we of course had major, huge military bases in Afghanistan from which we threatened Iran because it's right next door to Iran. It's on the border of Iran. Until what? Until the Taliban kicked us out, finally, and kicked out those military bases. The resistance, the Taliban is part of the resistance. Do I like the Taliban otherwise? No, not one single bit. But on that, I agree with them. I think the United States should be out of the Middle East. Don't we all? Don't we all? Unless we're a neocon who works for a think tank in Washington, D.C. Yes, we all do, except for those few people. So the resistance has kicked out the bases, the military bases that were to the east of Iran and to the north of Turkmenistan, another one. Just to the north of Iran, we had a U.S. major base in Turkmenistan until recently. Turkmenistan is a largely Muslim country that is not liking what the United States has been doing in the Middle East. And there was a rising resistance to having that base in that country. And they finally were forced to close it. The resistance. Iran, yes, it's true, has been not the only funder and supporter of the resistance throughout the Middle East to kick the U.S. out, but it's been the main supporter. Yes, it's true. They have supported what are called the proxies or the terrorist proxies that remain in Iraq since the Iraq War. Many different militias remained after the Iraq War, continuing to fight to this day to kick the United States truly and completely out of the Middle East, which they never did after the Iraq War. They said, oh, we're going to leave, withdraw. They partly did from Iraq. They didn't really. They've kept personnel and various versions of bases in and around Iraq ever since. That's what those resistance faction terrorist groups in Iraq are doing. Their principal goal is to kick the United States out of their country. The Houthis, same thing. Do I like the Houthis otherwise? No, not a single thing about them do I like other than that. Other than the fact that their primary goal is to kick Israel, yes, and the United States out of the Middle East. Why should we have any military presence in the Middle East? That is so far from where I live, I can't even understand it. And we have gained nothing from it. We have spent trillions, that's with a T. Brown University now estimates that we have spent $2 trillion on U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East since 2020, since the 1990s. We have killed God knows how many people, hundreds of thousands or a million, somewhere in there, somewhere between 100,000 and a million people in the Middle East we've killed. We've had many thousands of our own people killed in the Middle East. And we've gained exactly what? Where are we now? Is the Middle East closer to what we wanted than before? Oh my God, Iran is far more powerful than it was before because it is the only power in the Middle East that has actually put up money and resources and weapons and personnel to the resistance against the American empire in the Middle East. Here's another person who is a part of the resistance to the American empire in the Middle East, Thad Russell. Aren't we all? Aren't we all? Do we need to agree with everything or anything else about the people who actually live in that place, who want to expel the United States from their own region, from their own countries, from their own land? This is what Iran has been about since 2020, since 2003, since the Iraq War. The Iranian government, led by fundamentalist ayatollahs who try to impose Sharia law on their own people. So Thad Russell hates that and has written extensively about how Iranian Sharia law is being undermined constantly by the desires of the people who live there to be free. But the Iranian government is the one who wants to kick the United States out of the Middle East and have the resources and the military and the power to do so potentially. And so I see no reason to not simply support Iran in this war. The war is about the United States continuing its presence in the Middle East as a military occupying force. If you're opposed to that and all the money and death that's been associated with that, then on this fight, this battle, this war between Iran and the US and Israel, you absolutely, clearly, and simply and only need to be on the side of Iran. It doesn't mean you're endorsing anything else about them. But on this, I hope, and I think we should all hope, that Iran wins. And so we have this recent attack over the weekend by Israel against Iran. They sent a bunch of missiles in to Iran, and now no one knows exactly what happened. The reporting is just all over the place. So all the Israelis and all their pro-Israel sycophants in the Western media have been saying, oh my God, the Ayatollah has no clothes. They have no air defense system. Every single missile from Israel landed and destroyed its target. And we now know that Iran is completely defenseless. This was a perfectly successful attack, and all the air defense systems, the S-300s provided by Russia to Iran, were destroyed. Now we can do whatever we want with Iran, and Iran is helpless. That's what Israel is saying, and the pro-Israel people are saying. Everyone else is saying that there's actually almost no evidence and no reporting whatsoever to suggest any of that. We see from satellite images that there's been some damages to a few military installations, sure, but the extent of it is completely unknown. And we also know that Iran's nuclear weapons are stored way, way, way underground, underneath where a 2,000-pound bomb can reach, which is what Israel possesses. And so we don't know. But I do strongly suspect that the Iranian military is still largely intact and still largely able to launch all kinds of missiles at Tel Aviv and land all kinds of missiles into Tel Aviv. We have to be on the side of the Iranian regime, I'm sorry to say. I know they look weird and they look scary, and Islamism is no fun, and Sharia law sucks, and fuck them. But on this particular fight, there's only one side to take, and you got to take the side of the resistance. I'm sorry that they wear turbans, but this is who we have to be in favor of. And this does not mean I am pro-Iran or pro-Ayatollah or any of that. Just on this fight, they are the only people who actually can get the United States out of the Middle East. They actually have the power, the military capability to get the United States out of the Middle East. And wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? So why are we not in full-throated support of Iran's resistance against the United States and the American proxy, Israel? It seems so simple to me. There you have it.
Israel said that this concluded their offensive against Iran, and that they have no further strikes planned. Do you think Iran should retaliate?
Okay, so here's the thing. What I was getting at there is that if Israel is right that they did destroy all of Iran's air defense systems, it's just a terrible day. It's just a terrible day. It's an empirical question. I don't know. I mean, it's certainly possible. Sure. The United States and Israel combined, I assume, have the ability to do a lot of damage in Iran. No one disputes that. Whether they succeeded in that is just, who knows? But if they did, that's bad. It's bad for humanity. It's bad for the world. It's bad for America. It's certainly bad for the people, I think, who live in the Middle East, unless they live in Tel Aviv. And even then, I think it's bad for them. This is the first time that Iran and Israel have shot missiles into each other's countries. First time, and they landed. I mean, there are craters in Tel Aviv. I can't imagine wanting to continue to live in Tel Aviv. I'd never lived in a city in which, you know, missiles from another country come in periodically and hit the ground. Why couldn't that be in my house? But so, yeah. This also seems to me, and this, I guess, is the most important question. The Biden administration immediately, I think within a few hours after the Israeli strikes in Iran, issued a statement saying, this is the end. This is the end. There will be no more escalation. This is over. Everything's fine. Everybody can relax. I don't see that at all. The Israeli government, to a man, to a woman, probably 80 to 90% of the Israeli public, according to opinion polls, every single pro-Israel media commentator in the West has been calling directly, explicitly, aggressively for a direct war with Iran for years and years and years and years. They want a war with Iran. They are adamant. They want a war with Iran. The Republican Party, most of it, wants a war with Iran. Probably half of the Democrats want a war with Iran. And Iran, the Iranian regime since 1979, has been 100% consistent in its opposition to the existence of a Jewish ethno-state in Palestine. And now, with most of the world looking at Israel as a bunch of baby killers, which it is, among other things. Sorry, it's not only that. They have great hummus in Tel Aviv, but they're also a bunch of baby killers. I don't see this de-escalating. I don't see this as the end. I see this as the beginning. And I'm sorry to say, I just see it as people in Tel Aviv are going to die. I think for the first time, I think people in Tel Aviv are going to be hit by missile strikes, civilians, military personnel. And that, I think, will be the beginning of the end of the state of Israel as a Jewish ethno-state. I just don't see how people will continue to want to live there if this continues. Will Iran put its tail between its legs and walk away? I doubt it. It's possible, but we'll see. But the thing is, if Iran has been defeated, that's a terrible thing for those of us who want to see an end to the American empire. So
maybe maybe Iran's not defeated, but we're at a decent stopping point for now. There's no reason to return volleys. The missile defense system might be totally on board, and maybe Iran will return to being cautious. Like they seem to have been exercising quite a bit of restraint in the last, let's say, 15 years. And maybe they'll continue to do that. And we have an out for the expansion of the war right now, especially.
Yeah. I mean, again, they're up against not the Israeli government. They're up against the United States. And we saw that map. We saw how many bases there are surrounding Iran. And we also know that the United States has not one nuclear bomb, but as many nuclear bombs as you could ever want to throw at a country. And so we could, of course, annihilate every single person in Iran and make the entire country into glass, as Ted Cruz said, I think once. Of course. But, I mean, yeah, I forgot what I was going to say there. Anyway, let's move on. We have another thing, right? We have 20 minutes. Oh yeah, ballot boxes. Let's do that.
In around Portland, Oregon area, and in Washington, around Vancouver, Washington, 2 ballot boxes have been attacked with incendiary devices. Hundreds of ballots are burnt up. They're alleging that another device with Free Gaza and Free Palestine written on it was also in these boxes. So I don't know if that tells you the motive of these people. Maybe this was the left-wing anarchists not having a cause for a while, so they picked up sowing chaos in our election systems. What do you think of this?
Yeah. So it has to do with the United States being the size that it is. If we have 350 million people in a country that's democratic, in which we allow everybody to vote, and that population is highly contentious and polarized, and there have been major claims of election fraud recently, with lots of examples, how could it be possible to stop many people from attempting election interference, like burning ballots? It's just too big of a country to police in that way. The electoral system is too decentralized and far-flung and vast to keep on lockdown. And it's so vulnerable to God knows how many people out there on both sides who want to do something to alter the election, to make sure that their person wins. There are obviously vast numbers of people in the Democrats and the Republicans who would love to stuff ballot boxes or burn ballot boxes or cheat in some way or another, because they think the other person, the other candidate, is Hitler or Stalin or whatever, is the end of civilization and the end of America. I mean, they really do think that. And so they're morally obligated. Both sides, are they not morally obligated to burn ballots and stuff ballot boxes? Because everybody voting for Kamala thinks that Trump is Hitler, and everybody voting for Trump thinks that Kamala Harris is Xi Jinping. Well, I mean, if that were true, I mean, I will do just about anything to stop Xi Jinping or Hitler from running my country. And so burning ballots or stuffing ballot boxes or cheating in the system is like no problem for me if that's what's at stake here. And that's what we've been told by both sides. So of course, we're going to have things like this happen. And this is just the beginning. We're a week out and they're already burning ballot boxes. What I want to say to everybody about this is that we are about to see, I'm pretty sure, just endless, protracted, nauseating claims of election interference by both sides. And I don't see this ending. Now, this could be a great thing, though, Michael Weimer, because if you don't like the size and the scope of the American national government, this will be, I'm predicting, this election will be a major delegitimizing event for the very idea of an American national government that encompasses everything from Alaska to Miami, from San Diego to Maine, all 350 million people. I think people are going to see the system as being fundamentally, I think maybe irredeemably corrupt. We're already seeing people burning ballots. I mean, do you trust, if you lived in Washington State or Oregon, would you trust that this will be a fair counting? No. Of the election for you? No. And that's going to be all over the country. First of all, every Trump supporter already thinks the whole thing's corrupt. So that's half the country doesn't believe in the system.
Yeah, 2020 was that for half the country already.
And now you've got like Republicans or conservatives burning ballot boxes. And so now you've got lots of liberals not believing in the system.
I don't think this was a targeted attack by conservatives to get rid of Democrat votes in heavy Democrat areas. My guess is that it actually might be Antifa types trying to sow chaos.
Sure.
Because like it's Portland, right?
It doesn't matter.
It's
perception.
Yeah. It
doesn't matter. It's the perception.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And the perception's out there and it's growing and it's going to grow among liberals. Liberals are going to now think that Trump people, MAGA people are out there burning ballot boxes, right?
Yeah, especially if Trump wins.
Yeah. And so what my point is, this is a great thing. People will think that their vote will not count because of the corruption in the system.
The people doing this might believe exactly what you believe, and they might believe this is a good thing to do because it will result in this positive outcome that you're describing right now. They might be that brand of anarchist that they think totally legit. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's similar to the 1970s, post-Vietnam, post-Watergate, when you saw sort of a historic low in people's trust in government and in the governmental system and the electoral system and all that stuff. I mean, you had multiple polls at the time in the mid 70s showing that never before had Americans trusted less in government. And that's what we want. That's always healthy. And that's what we have now, I think. And that's what this election, I think, will reap. We'll reap a new kind of 1970s style distrust in government in general, which is incredibly healthy. And I hope that happens, and I think it will happen because of all of these questions about the integrity of the electoral system.
There's another hope that could be out there. There's a hope that this will be the election that spurs legitimate election reform from both sides. Maybe if Trump wins this time, he'll say, hey, I argued about the last election. You're arguing about this election. Let's make election day a holiday. Let's have paper ballots. Let's make sure that only citizens vote. Let's have the infrastructure put in to make the most free and fair elections possible. And I think that is something that could get bipartisan support. Maybe not, because I do think the Democrats openly advocate cheating, and that's like central to their strategy, is getting non-citizens to vote and doing as much ballot harvesting as possible. But this might be the election that pushes that to a place of necessity if the American government's going to continue at all.
Push what though? Like, what's the thing you hope will come specifically? What reform? Specific reform?
Paper ballots, reform voter rolls, make election day a holiday, and have some way to, maybe through blockchain, verify who you voted for. I think we have the technology to do that.
Okay.
Verify that you voted, but you can't verify who you voted for. And there are other countries that have more free and fair elections that are more transparent. And our system is made to be as non-transparent as possible.
Yeah. So if we got that, if we got like a technically, objectively, truly fair, right, uncorrupted electoral system.
In 2019, real quick, in 2019,
yeah,
Kamala Harris was saying we need to go to paper ballots because Russia can't hack a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we would get is the American politics of the 1980s and 1990s and everything before, right? Mm-hmm. When there was a little bit of corruption here and there, but nothing compared to what is being charged, at least recently.
Yeah.
We will get a much quieter, more stable political system, electoral system. I think we'll get the parties will agree more with each other. We'll get more consensus, and maybe that's a good thing for everybody, but not to me.
Yeah.
The real reform we need is not to make sure that it's all fair, although I guess I'm for that. I just don't care as much. What we need is real competition among the parties. We need third and fourth and fifth and sixth and seventh serious political parties to bring real intellectual challenges to the Democrats and the Republicans, not just Jill Stein and the Green Party every 4 years saying this or that about a Green New Deal or ending the American empire, half of which I agree with. But we need to see like real major parties that participate in the debates. They have to change the rules about the debate so that the third and fourth parties can actually debate the Democrats and the Republicans. And we need to see some sort of system, proportional representation system in which third and fourth parties and fifth parties can have seats in Congress, like in Europe, like in basically every country in Europe, that's the case. So even like radical parties in Europe will often have a place in parliament, a seat in parliament, at least one. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see a real debate. And we're ready for that because we have massive, incredible, diverse debates in popular culture, right? In the media in America, just not in politics. But my God, if you look at the media and you count the alt media, the way that Americans now discuss politics, it's my goodness, it's like monarchists versus socialists versus libertarians versus paleoconservatives versus Zionists versus everybody. We're all in here fighting it out, and it's kind of wonderful. But when you get into the ballot box and when you get into government, when you get into the Capitol building, when you get into the Senate and the Congress and the presidency, it's the same fucking shit over and over again with the same tiny little narrow discourse as ever before. So we are ready for serious electoral reform where the parties are the party duopoly is broken up and we have access by the radical parties to the debates and to the ballots in every state. And we are paid attention to, I don't know, radical, the alternatives, whoever parties get the same kind of attention as the Dems and the Republicans in the media and all the rest of it, and seats in Congress, seats in the Senate. That's the real reform. That's when we have a different country. That's when I think that is when I think the dissidents of the left and the right will be largely satisfied. I think that most of their complaints will be met simply by that, by diversifying the electoral process and introducing actual real competition and making it possible for a pluralistic democracy to actually happen where there's real fighting and real competition among the parties. I will still not vote for any of them. I just want them to fight it out more. I want there to be more fighting among the ruling class. I want more fighting, more competition among the political parties, the political elite, for my allegiance, for my vote, for my whatever, for my support. I want them to fight more for me and for you and for all the rest of us. That's what we all need. A really, truly accountable political establishment, which we certainly don't have now, but we just need more competition. So that's the reform. Yeah.
My thesis on that is that Donald Trump and MAGA sort of introduced a second party to the uniparty and actually gave us our first choice ever,
totally,
majorly electorally. And if you want to move in that direction, you need MAGA to win this time, because if MAGA loses, MAGA essentially is gone. And then your John McCain's, your Liz Cheney's take over the Republican Party again. It's the establishment returns to the Republican Party. Although I think that might not happen because the MAGA bench is very deep this time. But you return to the uniparty where Mitt Romney and Obama agree on everything. They just argue over who will do the job better. And all choice is gone. You've seen the Democratic Party use lawfare to go against all of their political opponents, against Jill Stein, against Cornel West, against Trump. Steve Bannon just got released from prison yesterday. So you don't see those measures happening. You don't see MAGA trying to suppress libertarians. You don't see MAGA trying to suppress ballot measures for their opponents. Trump has explicitly said, I'm not going to lock Hillary up. I'm not going to go after Hunter Biden. I'm not going to go after Joe Biden. And he seems to be wanting to convince people to vote for him and to have more options available. I think he's changed the game by going to the Libertarian National Convention and making his case as to why they should vote for him and being completely transparent about
it. That right there, everybody, was the best by far argument I've heard to vote for Trump. No, really, that's, I've heard some decent arguments for voting for Trump, but that's the best right there.
Yeah.
And everybody should go clip that right there, what Michael just said, the last 2 minutes or whatever it was, and put that on YouTube. I'm serious, and put it on Twitter. And I'm not going to vote for him. Mm-hmm. I don't think. Maybe you
live in California. What do you have to lose?
That's a good point. That's a good point. There's a lot I like about him, and there's a lot I hate about him. Mm-hmm. But there's nothing I like about the Democrats. So
here's what's great about voting for Trump. You can vote for Trump and not tell anybody. You can still
is that actually true? Don't they dox you when they immediately dox you when you vote for Trump?
No, you could just lie to everybody.
I'm pretty sure the county. No, I think the Alameda County Registrar here just immediately they put all your contact information on the web when you vote for Trump. I think that's the way it goes here in California, the People's Republic of California. No, man, it's true. And listen, I want to say this, and then we got to go because I have to do drugs. Donald Trump and JD Vance, my God, those two guys, and I've got problems with them elsewhere. Okay. But as I've said before, and I'll say it again, and I got to say that Vance interview with Dylan that you turned me on to today, and I watched today because of you. Those two guys, they express the exact kind of skepticism toward American war, American empire, American occupation of foreign lands that I do believe most Americans would subscribe to if they knew anything. Which is to say that these two guys actually are expressing the kind of sentiment I have always hoped my entire life I would ever hear in the American political establishment. Skepticism about America being the policeman of the world, being the governor of the world, being the hegemon of the world. Donald Trump and JD Vance running for president and vice president are the first candidates in American political history to not be members of the American imperial religion. And for that alone, I will be very okay with anybody voting for Trump and Vance. I just don't think I will, but we'll see. Maybe it'll convince me. Well, next time I see you, we're going to have a new president, or at least we'll have a new president-elect.
Let's see. Will the polls be open still? Let's see. It'll be 4 p.m. your time on Tuesday. So
this is a Wednesday. Yeah.
Well, so you'll still have 2 hours to vote. You'll have a half hour to vote after our show. So you could still run after. You could still run out to the polls in 15
Wait,
minutes.
no, the election's on Tuesday. The show's on Wednesday. What are you talking about?
Oh, the show's on Wednesday. My bad. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. I'm glad you're the one doing drugs, not me. Okay. We got to go, but we got to go to Unregistered Live because I got to hang out with my peoples. And if you want to be part of my peoples, just be a patron, $5 a month. And we hang out. And after every Unreported, at Unregistered Live, which is a Zoom meeting, hour and a half, we talk, we chill, we argue, we play, we do things. Go to patreon.com/unregistered, become a patron. And you know what? Even if you don't want to hang out with us in a Zoom meeting after Unreported, you should go become a patron anyway, because we need help and you need to support us. And we need to continue this show because obviously, if you've been listening to us, you know that we are the only thing standing between civilization and barbarism. So go, $5 a month, barbarism over here, civilization over here, $5. Come on, what a deal. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Michael. You're amazing. I'm going to go smoke a blunt and see people at Unregistered Live right now.
Mm-hmm.
How's that?
Sweet. Great.
Love you, man. Peace.
We're out. Thanks so much.
Bye.
You too, bro.